The land stretched wide as a held breath, all golden dust and tired brush, with a sky wore its pale blues like an old shirt washed too many times. Wind moved through it like memory, steady and quiet, never in a hurry. In that wide-open world, tucked near the foot of Stone Ridge, sat a ranch worn down by years and sun. Shutters loose, porch half-tilted, fences leaning like tired men resting on their last good leg. But it stood, and so did the man who called it home. Eli Calder hadn't spoken more than a dozen full sentences in the last year. His voice had gone thin with disuse, like a riverbed left dry too long. He had once had a wife whose laugh filled the kitchen, and a boy whose boots thumped across the floor before dawn, racing toward mischief. But that was 10 winters ago, and snow had fallen since, and grief had settled into the cracks of the house like dust. He moved like a shadow now, deliberate and quiet, woke before light, fed the horse, split the wood, wrote in the little brown journal he kept in the drawer beside the sink, not because anyone would ever read it, but because silence needed somewhere to go. He kept one chair at the table and one plate. The other chair stayed pushed in, untouched. He never left dishes in the sink overnight. It mattered to him, the keeping of things. On the morning it happened, the sun was climbing slow over ridge, and the dog, half coyote, half something softer, lifted her head and growled low. Eli was oiling the hinges on the barn door when he saw them, 10 of them, girls, Apache by the braid, and beat of them, young, with faces like worn stone. The oldest might have been 16. The youngest could barely keep pace, her arms wrapped tight around her middle, hair tangled and dry. They move as a unit, barefoot and silent, like wind across tall grass. One stepped forward. Her eyes were a dark fire, unreadable, but not frightened. "Shelter," she said. Eli straightened. His hand hovered near the wrench tucked into his belt, then fell away. She didn't beg, didn't explain, just stood there, shoulders squared like someone who'd learned not to ask twice. He looked at them, dusty and thin, eyes rimmed with too many sleepless nights. There were no men with them, no horses, just them and the weight they carried. He gave one nod, small and solemn. The barn door creaked open. That night, he made stew from the last of the potatoes, added carrots he'd meant to save, and boiled it slow. The girls sat cross-legged in the hay, bowls warm in their hands, their voices quiet. No one said thank you. No one asked questions. He didn't join them. He watched from the threshold, a shadow with a spoon in his pocket and a furrow in his brow. The wind rattled the tin roof. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote howled. The next morning, they were still there. And the morning after that, the dog, who barked at every passing hawk, lay her head in the lap of one girl no older than 12. Another helped Eli patch the corner fence where a storm had knocked loose the planks. She didn't say a word, just held the board steady while he hammered. They moved like folk who'd traveled far without a map, eyes always scanning, hands always ready. Eli didn't ask where they came from, didn't ask where they were going. It felt like if he asked, they'd vanish. He added more water to the coffee, repaired a second pitchfork, found extra bowls in the old cabinet out back. The oldest girl, the one who had first spoken, he learned her name from one of the little ones who called her Tansy. She had a way of watching things with stillness, as if measuring the world's weight in silence. He caught her reading the edge of his journal once, the leather cover peeking from the table drawer. She didn't open it, just looked, then looked away. That evening, he found a folded scrap of paper tucked beside his cup. The handwriting was careful, crooked, written by someone used to carving messages into wood or stone. Some things are spoken best with silence. He stared at the words a long while, then picked up his pencil and wrote below it, "You're safe here." He left it where she'd find it. 3 days later, she started feeding the hens before he could. Eli had once thought the house too quiet, too filled with ghosts. But now there were voices. Not many, not loud, but laughter by the firelight, humming in the barn, tiny footfalls up and down the porch stairs. The fence that once leaned crooked now stood straighter, propped up by small hands and unspoken purpose. One of the little ones carved a rabbit from driftwood and left it on the steps. Another braided a daisy chain, and looped it through the dog's collar. Eli found himself writing again in the evenings, more than before. Not just lists or journal lines, but reflections, descriptions. He wrote the word hope one night and circled it without realizing. The girls never spoke of their past. Eli never offered his. They shared chores and meals, not stories. But something passed between them all the same, like rain soaking into parched earth. Slow, gentle, certain. He sat out on the porch one dusk, watching them braid each other's hair in a loose ring near the corral. The sun was setting low, painting their shadows long in gold. Tansy stepped away from the others and stood beside him. They didn't look at each other, just watched the horizon. He passed her a tin cup of coffee. She didn't drink it, but held it warm in her palms. They stood like that for a while, two silhouettes carved against the falling light, neither asking, neither offering. But something old and wounded in each of them softened. She spoke just once before stepping back into the circle of girls. "Some wind only blows one way," she said. He nodded, not needing more. That night, he added 11 names to the back page of his journal. No surnames, just names, carefully spelled. When he lay down to sleep, the house no longer creaked with sorrow. It simply breathed. And though he did not say aloud, the thoughts settled into him like seed into soil. They would stay, at least for now, and maybe for the first time in a decade. He hoped they would be why mid-October the light shifted. It came in lower, warmer, brushed the fields with the same hush a mother might use to soothe a fevered child. The girls began wearing Eli's old coats, sleeves rolled, hems dragging. Tansy moved through the house like she'd been born to it, sweeping ash from the hearth before he noticed, hanging wash blankets over the railing with practiced rhythm. They didn't talk much, still, but the silence had changed. It no longer sat stiff between them. It moved, stretched, made room for warmth. One afternoon, the girls found a buried bucket of nails near the shed. Rusted mostly, but a few still good. They built a crude swing from a low mesquite and cheered when the littlest one soared back and forth, boots kicking air. Eli watched from the porch, one boot resting on the rail, a slow grin easing the lines of his face. Later that same day, Tansy brought him a tin of buttons they'd scavenged from the cellar. She didn't say what they were for. He didn't ask. She set them beside his journal and left, the quiet clicking of her boots fading like thoughts that don't insist on being known. That evening, the dog barked twice, short and unsure. A rider came up the slope, alone, hat low, coat stained with desert sweat, horse lathered and irritable. Eli stood and stepped down from the porch without a word. Tansy appeared beside the door, still and waiting, the younger girls tucked out of sight. The man was white, maybe 40, with a beard like unshorn bristle and eyes too bright for kindness. He sat like a man used to having the last word. "Calder," he said, chewing something. "Heard you've been running a boarding house for redskins." Eli said nothing, just crossed his arms. The man looked past him, toward the barn. "Word in town says some of your stock's gone missing. Folks talking, seeing tracks, saying you might be sheltering trouble." Eli's voice came low, like the first roll of thunder on an open plain. "Ain't none of your business what I shelter." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Brogan, Judd Brogan. I deal in strays. Sometimes horses, sometimes girls. Depends who's asking." His grin widened. "You might be sitting on something worth a little coin, friend." Tansy stepped out from the shadow. Her face betrayed nothing, but the way her hands clenched said everything. Brogan's gaze slid to her. He tipped his hat with a mock flourish. "Well now, I know that face. You was the one in Prescott. That old camp down by the wash. You got away." Tansy didn't flinch. Eli's foot shifted just a little, enough to mean something. Brogan caught the movement and laughed. "You gonna play hero, Calder? For a bunch of half-breeds that ain't even yours." Eli looked up at him, slow, deliberate. "They are now." Brogan's face darkened. "You're a fool," he spat. "You got no kin, no one to speak for you. These girls ain't but whispers, and whispers blow away." Eli raised one brow. "Maybe, but you won't." The dog growled low again. Brogan spat into the dust. turned his horse with a yank, and rode off, throwing sand behind him like a curse. That night, no one slept much. The wind creaked the rafters louder than usual. The dog paced. Eli sat with his journal open, pencil in hand, but wrote nothing. In the early hours, a spark lit the horizon red. Eli was already up. He saw the flames lick the far fence line, the dry grass catching fast. Smoke bloomed like a black flower. He didn't wake the girls. Didn't shout. He grabbed a shovel, filled pails in the trough, moved with calm fury. By the time Tansy appeared, dragging a water barrel with two others, he had cut a line through the grass with the edge of a hoe. They worked until morning, stamping and dousing, smoke in their hair, ash on their hands. The fire died before it reached the barn, but the edge of the corral was blackened, and one fence post was no more than char. After, the girls sat in a weary circle, coughing. Tansy stood outside the circle, watching the trail. "He'll come back," she said. "Not fear, just certainty." Eli sat on the porch, arms resting on his knees. He didn't answer her directly, just said, "Fence'll need resetting. We'll do it tomorrow." But she stayed out there long after the rest had gone in, arms crossed, eyes on the ridge, a guardian who knew the shape of danger. By afternoon the next day, the sun hung lazy and fat in the sky, and the girls were quiet. They whispered less, stayed close to the porch, the barn, the dog. One tried to play a reed flute, but it came out brittle and broken. When the hooves returned, they weren't alone. 3 riders this time. Brogan led, face twisted with smug heat. The other 2 were younger, boys really, but armed and eager, guns loose in their belts. Eli met them at the gate, no weapon in hand, but the rifle leaned just behind the porch post. Brogan didn't dismount. "You ready to give up what don't belong to you?" he called. Eli didn't move. Brogan's horse stepped closer. "Look, I ain't unreasonable. I'll take the older one. The little ones I'll leave to the mission folk. You can keep your barn rats. But the girl, Tansy, was it? She's mine." The door behind Eli opened. Tansy stepped out slow, not running, not hiding. In her hands, she held Eli's journal, the leather cover soft with wear. Her eyes didn't waver. She opened it, found a page, and read aloud. Her voice was low, but clear enough to carry. If a man can offer shelter, even a ghost, maybe he's not one himself. A pause. The breeze stirred the silence like breath in a sleeping room. Brogan sneered. "You think words will stop bullets?" Eli stepped forward. "Just enough. You want her," he said, quiet as dusk. "You'll have to go through me." The 2 boys looked at each other. One shifted in his saddle. Young men often bluster until faced with a still man willing to die standing. Brogan's sneer faltered. The dog appeared beside Eli, hackles raised, teeth bared. Behind Tansy, the girls emerged. All 10, lined up like the wind, had gathered into form, each holding something: stones, pitchforks, broken tools. Their small shoulders squared, and behind them the land. Watching, Brogan stared, then laughed once, sharp, but his fingers didn't twitch toward his gun. He tugged the reins and turned. "Route with them, Calder," he muttered. "Hope they bury you deep." They rode off fast, not running, but not staying. Eli waited until the sound of hooves disappeared into the hills, then turned, took the journal from Tansy's hands, and looked her full in the eyes. "You did right." She looked like she might say something. Instead, she nodded and went to check the younger girls. That night, the stew pot was full, the porch was lit with lantern, and someone strung dried corn along the rail. Eli sat in his old chair, journal resting on his lap, pen scratching. He didn't write about Brogan, didn't write about fire or fear. He wrote, "They stood with me. That's enough." In the weeks that followed, the girls fixed the burned fence, painted the barn white with leftover lime. Tansy built a garden bed from old lumber and filled it with winter vegetables, onions, garlic, hope. One morning, one of the girls sat beside him and asked if she could plant a tree. He pointed to a spot by the swing. "That's where my boy used to play," he said. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Then maybe that's where the new thing should start. When spring came, the tree was blooming, and Eli never rode alone again. If this tale touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more Wild West stories that speak to the soul.